All right. Have you ever worried, and I'm going to guess that you probably have you ever worried that your kids are going to go off into the world after homeschooling and they're going to suddenly discover that there's some huge body of knowledge that you never taught them? Or have you worried that your kids are going to try to get into college or maybe they'll get into college and then they'll be in these classes and people will be talking about things that they've never heard of and they go, we never did this. I never learned this. This is one of the reasons why so many families decide not to homeschool because they don't think that they are capable of teaching their kids everything they need to know, or they just have this fear that there's something they're going to forget. And they seem to think that by keeping them in public school, they're going to get all the knowledge that they need. And there will never come a time in their life when they run up against some concept or some idea or some whatever that they've never heard of because they went to conventional school. Okay, I want to talk for a few minutes today about why educational gaps are not something you need to be worrying about, okay? Real quick, if you're not yet on my email list and you want to get homeschooling encouragement and hacks and advice in your inbox, go to goodschooling.net, scroll to the bottom, put your email address in, and you will start getting those right away. So here's the thing. I am a product of the public school system, okay? Kindergarten all the way through college. All of the schooling I ever did was public school, okay? Not only that, but I was in a lot of the higher classes, took a lot of AP classes, a lot of advanced classes, particularly in English, reading. I was always in the top spelling group. I was always in the top reading group, writing group, all that kind of stuff. Math, not so much. But in anything having to do with language, that was my jam, okay? And yet, even though I went through all public school, even though I was in every high or honors English class that you could get into, I never once had a class that taught me Greek or Roman mythology. Now, on the surface, that maybe doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you think about how little bits and pieces of all of those myths have made their way into our cultural collective mind, right? There are so many phrases we use. Achilles' heel, Midas touch, he's an Icarus, right? All these different things that we not only see in literature, but we use these phrases. They're like code that we can use. And when we use those phrases, people know what we're talking about, right? And I had friends who were in the same school district, went to the same schools, but had different teachers, and they took those classes. So even being in a public school in the high honors English class, I never once learned Greek and Roman mythology. Okay, fast forward to college. You see a lot of the Greek and Roman mythology stuff make its way into the kind of reading that you have to do when you are in college, right? It even comes up in science. Where do we get the names of our planets, right? Where do we get the names of so many of the constellations? All these different things. They all come from Greek and Roman mythology. I didn't have that base of knowledge in my head because I had never learned it. What do you think happened when I realized that I did not know that information? Life went on, quite frankly. I finished my classes. I got A's in all the English classes anyway. I got my degree. I went on to get a job. I went on to become an entrepreneur. I went on to have a family and to homeschool my own children, all without ever having had a class in Greek or Roman mythology. But what did I do? Like in and amongst all of that stuff, I looked up the myths. I got books from the library. I went on Google. I very recently, hey Siri, my phone, to find out, she just turned on, to find out who was Sisyphus. Because I'd read something somewhere about the plight of Sisyphus or so. I can't remember how they phrased it. And I was like, I don't know what that is. So I looked it up. Here's the thing, you guys. You will not be able to teach your child every single thing. You can't. Think about, okay, Even if all you did was to focus on history for your child's education. I know you wouldn't do that, but think about that, okay? If all you were to do is focus on history, do you think you would teach every single little thing that's ever happened or ever been recorded about history? There is such a massive amount of information. You can't teach it all. It's not possible to teach it all. Science, my word, every single day there's something new happening in science, right? How can you expect yourself to be able to teach every single thing? You can't do it. You can't do it. So what do you focus on? Okay? If we're going to accept the fact that we cannot teach everything, then what should we teach? Do we just teach nothing? No, of course not. But what do we teach? You teach the tools that your kids need to learn. You teach them reading, you teach them writing, you teach them critical thinking, you teach them basic math, and you teach them how to research, where to go to find answers, what the reliable sources are, how to identify bias, how to tell the difference between satire and reality, because I love me some Babylon Bee, but I cannot believe the number of people who think that what they're writing is real. They don't have the tool of critical thinking to be able to tell when they're reading satire. Now, granted, Babylon Bee sometimes gets it so spot on that it's a little hard to tell, but your kids don't need facts. They don't need facts. They do not need to memorize every imaginable thing that's out there, shove all this information in their head. That is not what they need. They need tools. And if they have those tools, they will be able to learn anything they need to learn. And see, here's the thing about the whole college entrance thing, right? Okay. How do homeschoolers get into college? The exact same way everybody else does. They take the tests, they write the essay, they fill out the application, they pay the fee, and they turn in their transcript. Okay? The exact same thing. But here's the thing. Colleges more and more are actively recruiting homeschoolers. And that's because homeschoolers know how to learn. They are motivated. They're self-motivated to learn. They like to find information. They know how to find information. Because they weren't just handed information and told to shove it in their head and memorize it for the test in 2 weeks. Okay? But because they were allowed to absorb information in a meaningful way, and because they were taught how to find what they need when they need it, and because they still enjoy learning, because they didn't have to spend 12 years just memorizing random, irrelevant facts taken out of context, having no relevance to their life. And here's one more thing to think about too. You were taught a whole lot of stuff when you were in school. How much of it do you actually remember? Does checking the box and saying, oh yes, I taught this to my class, oh yes, I taught this to my kids, does that count if when the child goes out in the world, they don't remember any of it? So just because your child is not being exposed to a ultra dense curriculum with all sorts of stuff in it does not mean that they're going to be at a disadvantage. It just means that they may need to occasionally pull out the computer in their pocket and ask it a question and find a little bit of information real quick that they'd never heard, that they didn't know was a thing. That's not going to stop them from college, from career, from meaningful life, meaningful work, fulfilling pursuits, okay? You forgetting to teach something, or you maybe switching curriculums so much that you kind of ended up missing something, or you not even knowing that something exists in order to teach it, does not mean that your child is going to somehow fail at life. And it does not mean that you are going to fail at homeschooling. Okay? So this whole idea of educational gaps, we've got to let it go. We've got to let it go. Facts are not an education. Memorized information is not an education. Having tools and skills and the knowledge of how to use those tools and skills, that is an education. And that will allow your child to do absolutely anything that they want to do. Okay, so I hope that was encouraging. Please join the Good Schooling email list so that I can give you some more little bite-sized, quick wins, quick advice, quick encouragement to help you along your homeschool journey. Just go to goodschooling.net, scroll to the bottom, put your email address in. All right, I will see you guys later. Have a great weekend.